All right then. So let's talk for a while about "Hurry Up Tomorrow." This is the newest record from the Weeknd, right? AKA Abel Tesfaye or Tesfaye. It's Tesfaye. I always get that
Can't
surname wrong,
remember.
right?
Yeah. I think I
Please.
just assume Testfire because somebody else we kind of know this also usually Testfire thing.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. That
Yeah.
that would be her middle name. Wink, wink. Right. So
Right.
that's that, right? Yeah. So this is his newest record, right? And all right. So before I begin, right? I well, myself and Ricardo, right? We won't count ourselves as big Weekend fans. Like we don't know
Right.
everything about his work
Yeah,
from
it is
from
just
the House of Balloons mixtape up to now. But we are
right.
familiar with his songs and albums as well. But we're not like diehard super
Yeah,
fans,
yeah.
right? So
He's
just so
just
you
one of those
know.
guys. Yeah, he's just one of those guys who just have workable, just really great music. Since I just stuff like Stargirl and Starboy and I just think of these great songs that he's just put together. Yeah, and then that is his appeal to Japanese pop is like a whole thing. Like he does know the songs that he's feel like a lost artist almost, like that kind of stuff now. Clearly he's tapping into Michael Jackson, he's clearly tapping into stuff that we haven't heard in a long time, and most like R&B and blues people not doing. Like he's one of those rare people where it's like, yeah, the R&B genre not really clicking right now, but he clicking. He's one of those. That's how I feel about him. He does. You feel like he holding up the genre now.
Yeah, yeah, agreed, right? So for me, right, so I wasn't like when I first heard of him, of course, was through the House of Balloons mixtape, right? And then that
Right.
eventually became a trilogy of mixtapes, and that really shot him to the that really put him on the map, right? And then of course, you have albums like Beauty Through the Madness, where you got Can't Feel My Face, and
Yeah.
Starboy, which had the title track and stuff like that. Yeah, that
Yeah.
really pushed him to the stratosphere,
Yeah.
right?
The first time I know him was with what's the name of that song boy with Future Trash Bag. I wanna say
Um,
Low Life. I'm trying to remember.
Oh,
Low Life.
that all right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Low Life. Low
yeah,
Life.
yeah, yeah. I
Low Life.
remember
Low
that. I
Life.
remember that.
Yeah.
I just can't remember what record it's from. It's not from. It's from early on. Early on. I just.
It's a future song. Yeah, it's not a
It's not a weekend
weekend
song.
song.
Okay, well
No, it's not a weekend song. Yeah,
that
it's a future
explains
song.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so, right.
Right. But for me, right, so it's not that I was late to the party, it's just I used to hear the music and
Yeah.
I got the dark neo noir hedonistic vibe
Yeah.
that Abel was tapping into. It's the haze of drugs and sex and all
Right.
that kind of stuff, that how it impacts his life, but it kind of fuels his career and his music as well, right? I get the vibe of it, right? But for me, I think like the big moment, the moment where I really, really, really took notice of this guy as like a true artist was when he dropped After Hours back
Right.
in 2020, I
Yeah.
believe it was, right? That was when I
That was
really took
excellent. Yeah.
notice. I know people love the earlier Weekend, right? The bedroom Weekend, right? Where it's all about the sex jams and all this kind of, I'll be with you, but I want to cheat with you. That bad boy kind of vibe, right? But I more prefer the 80s Weekend. See, when he
Yeah.
taps into, like you say, 80s R&B and it's like Michael Jackson stuff like that, city pop
Yeah.
as well too.
Yeah.
That was when I became a fan, and After Hours was the
Yeah.
beginning of that, right? Yeah, absolutely love the production from that, from top to bottom, right? But I'll confess, it's only when I listened to the album, like about, I think it's like the third or fourth time that I listened to it, that's when I really understood. Oh, that's what he trying to do. Oh, because I
Yeah.
just did like listen, like, all right, white people love this thing. White people love this thing. White people love this thing. Yeah, I mean the music great, all that stuff, but something about it was missing. And then when I listened one more time, I was like, all right, now I get it, right?
Right.
That's what I was saying. He taps into that whole dark side of of being a celebrity, being a sex symbol and all that kind of stuff. That's what he
Right.
taps into. But what he did so well in After Hours is that he used the 80s music, right? It's the music that we hear, as Gen Xers, right? We hear through 80s movies, right? And music and stuff that we hear on radio, right? And somehow he just able to recontextualize it to just paint these really grim portraits of fame and debauchery and loneliness and heartbreak. Now, he was just able to do that while using familiar 80s music to kind of rope us all into it now. And I thought that he nailed that perfectly with After Hours. I was like, oh, that's what he going for, right? That's what he trying to do here. And then back in 2022, sorry, Dawn FM dropped. And I'll never forget, I heard that early January 2022. And I will tell you, first listen, I call that album of the year contender one time. One
Right.
time. And that still remains my top favorite Weekend album trend. Just
Okay.
every
Yeah, Starboy.
song cut,
Yeah,
every
yes,
song,
yes.
like you just hit
Starboy is my
the nail
personal
in the
favorite.
head with everything.
Uh,
Oh, okay,
yeah,
Starboy's
yeah.
your favorite. Yeah,
Starboy is my personal favorite, mostly because of Starboy, Stargirl,
yeah, Stargirl
with
is
Lana
great.
Del Rey.
Yes.
Yeah, with Lana Del Rey, that's great. Starboy itself, the main track, and then I Feel It Coming. Like I
Oh,
Feel It Coming is such a banger.
and is a perfect album closer. That ends the
Yeah.
album off perfectly in my opinion. I love that song so
And
much.
then what's the name of the boy? What's the other truck? False Alarm. That's the truck.
Yes, False Alarm. How can I forget? Yes,
Yeah,
False Alarm. Right.
Party Monster too, John. Yeah, Party Monster's a classic too,
Oh
John. Yeah, I forget
yes,
about that.
yes. How can
Yeah,
I
yeah.
forget
Anyway,
that? Yeah.
but like even the Starboy music video is classic. And then my second favorite is Dawn FM. Dawn FM is like just straight city pop.
Yes.
Uh
Yes.
straight city pop. They're just like, wow, this is just nearly. And then because what I like about him is that you don't feel like he chasing a trend. Like I sure yeah, it had some big corporate calculation behind a lot of this, but he never felt like that. Like and because the whole on the internet city pop thing, with Taika or Onoki or whoever it is, that's a whole thing, right? He just tapped into that energy so perfectly, and I was like, oh wow, this is just straight up city pop too, and they nail it. Like you don't feel like he jumping on a trend just because the undercurrent of the music genre just there, and he just tap into it because again, if you know 4 a.m. or tracks like that, there's some classic city pop tracks. You go back how much I mean, and there's play it on slow vibes on YouTube or something like that. So
Yep.
then he know
Yep.
what to tap into, and he nail it. That's where Dawn FM come true now. Yeah, Dawn FM is also my second favorite, but still Starboy is still a classic for me. Still my
Yeah,
favorite.
totally understand, right? And for me, I just love the concept of it though, where it's basically him just being this fuck boy, right? Just someone who
Right,
just love
right.
to break women's hearts, right? Kind of in this, how to say? Well, when I say what it is, you'll understand where this album that I'm going to talk about falls into, right? He is in this purgatory, right, where he's hearing this radio station that just plays 80s hits, right? But all these songs, right, even though they don't connect to all right, so basically how this works, right? It's a concept album, but the album itself is not built around the concept. It's just like a collection of songs, but it's built around the concept of this fictional radio station called Dawn FM, right? But
Right.
the character that Abel plays here is like he is in purgatory, right? He's about to die, and like imagine this, like the last songs he's hearing, right? It's just wow, like hear what this guy going through, and the guy is literally him. It's like, wow, like I really was a piece of shit. Sure. Like, wow,
Right.
it's like he now realizing this as he about to die. This is all these songs about heartbreak, and you're out of time. Like that song, out of time. My God, like city pop redefined it in that
Yeah.
song, out of time. I
Yeah.
love that
Straight
song
up.
so much, right? Yeah. And then, but it's just the existential nature of it that I absolutely love now. But it's from an R&B singer perspective. That's what it is, right? But what makes it even better now, and I think this was a stroke of genius thread, having Jim Carrey be the
Right.
DJ,
Right.
and he is pulling from Eternal Sunshine, the Spotless Mind energy. That's what he bringing from, right? Even the outro that he does, the spoken word outro he does, is Eternal Sunshine inspired. Is that same sort of existential vibe that he tap into with that, right? And yeah, that was top 5 for me as far as 2022 records. Absolutely loved it. That was instant. Like I just loved it from the moment I heard it, right? So when it came to this record here, right, Hurry Up Tomorrow, believe it or not, this actually is the closing chapter of what was essentially a trilogy. Yeah, it started with After
Right.
Hours, and then Dawn FM, and then Hurry Up Tomorrow. So, like, I found this out after the fact. Like, after my first listen, I just went up on Wikipedia, did a little Googling, I was like, did a little reading, sorry. It's like, oh, that's what you're going for. So, After Hours is him in hell, like characters in hell. So that's why there's a lot of red in the album artwork and the videos and all that kind of stuff, right? But the idea is that he is just kind of succumbing to his sins, to his addiction. So it's just about kind of reveling in that hedonistic vibe, right? In that attitude, right? But eventually it kind of comes up to him, it catches up to him at the end, like literally at the very end of the album. It's almost as if he dies at the end, right? Well, kind of. It just sort of catches up to him, right? And Dawn FM is him in purgatory, so he's now seeing through this collection of tracks here. Wow, like I really like made a lot of mistakes in my life, Tread, but I can't like fix these things anymore because it's purgatory there. You know what I mean? You can't go back. to where we were, right? But this one here, this one specifically is about heaven and how Abel frames this, right? Well, the context of it, right? Just before we get to the review of the album itself, right? He was on this after hours tour, but he was also filming The Idol, which
Right.
yes was not one of my
Right.
favorite
Right. Right.
shows of
Right.
2023, but he tried thing, right? And I'll talk about that in a bit. Trying, well, the film side of Weekend, right? I'll talk about that in a bit, right? But yeah, during that performance while he was getting warmed up, dude lost his voice.
Right.
He lost his voice, and then when he was performing one of his songs, he lost his voice again, and he had to cancel the whole show. He had to stop the show, cancel everything, right? And that inspired him to do this album here, right? And what that instantly reminded me of is, a little classic from way, way back when called The Wall, right? From Pink Floyd, right? Where it was inspired from one of the band members while they were performing at a show. They felt like the audience, they just felt like a disconnect, like an emotional disconnect from the audience. They felt like the audience wasn't really taking in what they were saying or doing. They were just wilding out, right? And then one attendee was just being unruly, and that caused one of the band members to just get so mad he just spit at him, right? And that laid the groundwork for this album about isolation and loneliness and all that kind of stuff. Now, so the point is the idea of like with I see something similar with Weekend, right? Where he is inspired by something that happened at that show, and now in this case he's looking back. How he frames what the arc is on this album basically is him kind of saying, well, look, well, maybe just now I might be able to do this anymore, like physically and mentally I might just be
Right.
worn down. I can't do this no more. So he starts questioning now, well, while he's putting this album together, yeah, what would happen if I just like cease to exist, or if I just stop, or if I just quit, or whatever it is, right? So I don't know how true this is, right? Apparently this is what is also going on too, right? Because another album I relate this to is that Childish Gambino album from last year, the
Right.
Bando Stone record
Right.
that he did. Yeah, where basically Weeknd is saying here's what, this might be the last album I'll ever do under the moniker Weeknd. I might just call myself evil going forward.
Right.
That's what he going for. So in other words, before we officially start the review here, yeah, this is basically the end of the Weeknd. He's
Right.
killing the character off literally on this album, right?
Monday morning. Right.
I know.
Yeah.
But thematically I think it makes a lot of sense. Now I don't know
Right.
how, if he will stand by his word and say, look, this is the final album I'm gonna do as the Weeknd, right? But as far as the character of the Weeknd, that hedonistic character that he's been
Right.
playing ever since from the beginning, this feels like him saying, this is the last time you're gonna hear of this. But there's a few twists to it, a few caveats to it, right? But I'll get to that later on, right? So before I begin, Ricardo, did you say you listened to the album once, right? So just off your first listen, what you thought about it?
Yeah, no, it's sung real good. It's just like, because the opening track is the track that stick with me. That seemed to be like one of the hit tracks, so I think might come out. But he didn't bring out that; he bring out something else. But I wasn't familiar with that track off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Whereas the opening track, I just think of as the one that really like, all right, there's a hit track kind of thing, and then like, okay, I listened to it long. I seen 22 tracks. All right, let me listen to it. And it's like, okay, I could see. And then, to be fair, it was more, a lot of it was just other people saying, oh, this is like the greatest album ever. All right, I can see where it's coming from. But
know,
yeah,
boy. Yeah. And I'll talk about that. Again, as non-diehard fans, I'll talk about, what people will be saying all of this week. Oh, best Weeknd album ever. You know what I mean? I'll talk about that.
And they basically just kind of make the case like for it to come out so early in the year, it's kind of weird now. But like, yeah, this is I can see why people sticking with the album, but this is the hit there. Again, for the music video one, and then the opening track, Wake Me Up, really, really strong. But yeah, and then God, which one it was I was sticking with to Big Sleep. That real hard.
Yes. Big Sleep is great. Yeah.
Yeah, so
but
I thought it was stick with me. But again, when you skim through the album once, didn't have enough time to listen to just skim through the album, listen to a couple of tracks in depth, but nothing major. So
Right.
is you had to do the full thing. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, right. So just couple right before we start, right? So there was a single that he had put out late last year called Dancing in the Flames. I thought that track was great, right? And I was wondering, but it didn't show up on the track list actually, because but I found out afterwards is that, Abel just decided that nah, it just didn't need to be on the album, right? What I find so weird about that, right, is that like literally a day after he dropped this record, he had this basically this bonus version called the OXO or OOXO, whatever it is, edition, right? Where he added two extra tracks, right? Two bonus tracks, right? But yeah, no Dancing in the Flames. I thought that was kind of weird, right? I thought that that song itself was great, right? And it taps into that whole subversive take on 80s R&B and pop ballads. He tapped into that, right? Very subversive with the themes of it too, because he just basically talking about like trying to survive trying not to survive a car crash. That's what it's built around there. But basically saying that he finds enjoyment in the flames of the cars burning up. Is really dark, but when you hear the beat, it's like it sounds anything but dark, right? But that's what I love about Weeknd, especially with his songwriting. He's able to express really dark thoughts, but it's always under like really bright, colorful production. But that's the point. That's what he's trying to do, is the subversive nature of it, right? But yeah, that's not on the album, which was kind of weird, right? Also, the moment when it dropped now, I see this album is 86 minutes, right? And when I tell you why I feel is that way, it will make a lot of sense. So apparently, The Weeknd is also putting out a movie of the same name, right? I don't know when it's coming out. I think it's supposed to come out later this year. Miguel Jenna Ortega is supposed to be in it, and I think Abel Star in it as well, right? So first of all, I like the fact that he's still interested in making films, right? Even though Idol didn't work, he's still like really serious about it, right? But then now going to the album, that would explain why this album runs so long, right? But I know for a lot of listeners, even diehard, unless you are a diehard fan, you love everything that he makes, right? Yeah, I can imagine some people like, nah, skip this, skip that, skip that, skip that. All right, they'll feel intimidated by the length now. But I saturate like just from start to end, and I will say that for you to really appreciate the album, you gotta listen to it all the way through, from start to end. And then when you get the full context, like all the songs by heart, then you could skip a few songs and you just go about your day, right? But I would not recommend skipping, because you will lose the point of the album. You'll lose the gist of what's going on, right? It's one of those records.
I get that thematic through line with the album. It wasn't just like a hit thing where you could skip. I I love Starboy, but I don't really get a sense of a link per se. Paulo, somebody might correct me and tell me, oh no, Starboy is this genius thing that, you missed the point. And I did. But yeah, that's that. But, but I get true line with this because it has a sonic true line, clearly.
It does, yeah.
And every track just seems to lead into the other, like almost like a kind of flowing kind of thing. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, which I love, and that's one thing you always want with a concept album. You always want the tracks to kind of flow into each other, but individually the tracks had to work on their own, right? So yeah, going to the opening track, "Wake Me Up." Yes, you're right, it's great. For one thing, it samples two great songs. That would be the Scarface theme from the great Giorgio Moroder, right? And he actually appears on the record too, but more on that a little bit later, right? But yeah, fun fact, the synth heavy sound of this, right? Very 80s, very, the dark 80s synths, right? Yeah, inspired by, Giorgio's work on Scarface. If you remember the music from that movie, yeah, very dark, right? But it fit with the world that they were painting in that film, right? But also in that, it starts off with like the theme from Scarface, like a hand interpolation of it in the background while Weeknd is singing, and then it just like switches up to probably one of the best, how to say, boy, recontextualizations of Michael Jackson's Trilogy. Like just production wise, it sounds great because from the beat that doon 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 doon, it's Thriller. but like just like how the chords are put together, it doesn't sound like it. In other words, you know it's inspired by Triller, you know it's sampling it, but it doesn't sound structurally like Triller. I love that. I find that was great, right? So people can't come and say, "Oh, you just rip the Triller beat and sing over it." Well, I'm to you. No, it's actually it's actually a new beat formed from the old beat. That's the best way to sum it up, right? But yeah, you're right, Ricardo. This is a great way to kick things off, right? I just love how it sets up the tone of the album where he's talking about, what about his legacy, but in the same time he's questioning if God exists, you know what I mean? And if he does, it's like wake me up because he's drowning in sin and all that kind of stuff now, right? And that's like one of the major themes on this album, right? Him really feeling like he's unredeemable, like he just did so much bad things in his life that he is undeserving of any sort of reward, right? And on this opening track, he's just like, like, if you do exist, Lord, wake me up, right? So it's a great way to kick off the album. But yeah, any quick thoughts on Wake Me Up? I mean, seeing that you love the song so much.
This is track that stick with me, but right, it's just a song like I hit, they're putting it out, and it's the one that I could see myself, um, this is the one I see myself returning to, many times, So this is a hit. Like to me, I could easily see him making
A video
making a video out
or
of it, but it's
single,
not.
yeah.
He make a video. He made a video out of something. I trying to look
Yeah,
up
which
what it
which
is.
which I'll get into is a track that shows up later on. And I have to
Right,
talk about that video as well too, 'cause it's really really wild,
right,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
Up next, another banger. Cry for Me, boy. What I love too, and this is another great thing about this album that I love too, right? I like that he didn't just stick to city pop and 80s R&B and 80s synth music, right? Yeah, he do a little trap. Well, he kind of incorporate Afrobeat at the beginning of this track here, and then
Right,
near the end there was he had a little trap flavor drums, but he also used like this piano from this 80s R&B song called "I Wanna Be the One." I literally had to look it up, but when
right.
when that moment coming with the piano and the trap beat, that was hard. I was like, all right, this is real hard, right? But again, I just love the fact that he's not just sticking to old school music or 80s music, right? He does contemporary genres, like subgenres into this as well, right? But yeah, Cry for Me is another banger as well. And yeah, I mean both tracks just slap so hard in my opinion. But you're familiar with Cry for Me too, right? Or is just the first one that stick more with you?
Yeah, this one stick with me. I listened to this one too. Again, the only the first one that stick with like, alright, this is the hit, no, like that. But yeah, this track was hard too.
Yeah. So after that, now we get this brief interlude called "I Can't Fucking Sing," which, yes, it's this brief little thing where it's like I can't fucking sing, right? It's like that, right? And yes, that pretty much tells the audience, yes, this is really what inspired the album. Yes, because and I like how thematically he sets it up, right? Because again, like I said, he's thinking about it more like, oh, my voice goes, but what if my whole body goes? Like, what gonna happen? What gonna happen to me at this point on, right? And when you really think about it, that's like a great genesis for a concept album. Like just really thinking about your own mortality, your own future, if you will, as an artist. Like how much more of yourself can you give, right? So we get a true album highlight for me in the form of Sao Paulo. Boy, this song slaps, like just production wise, boy, it hard AF too. Just the club centric EDM instrumental. You hear like these energetic vocals. Is this Brazilian singer by the name of Anitta, right? I don't understand a lick of Portuguese, boy, but when you hear her vocals over this beat, I like I don't know, like it's impossible not to nod your head at this though. It just slaps so hard, right? And just thematically, what Abel is singing about is just basically him falling for this woman, but like he sets it up like early on, like he shouldn't be attracted to her. He should run from her because she's a demon or a succubus, right? But because he's the weekend, it's like, yep. I want to smash, he don't bad over she. So it's like that, right? But I just love the energy that comes from this beat though. It's dark EDM stuff, but just the energy of it though. Like you could just hear this in some rave or some club or whatnot, and you would just be wilding out of this though. It really, really hits, right? So up next is another album highlight in the form of Baptized in Fear, which takes the concept of baptism now and uses it to describe this genuinely frightening moment in for Abel's character on this album, right? And here's the thing, I speaking as someone who actually was baptized too. hearing him talk about almost drowning in a bathtub because he fell asleep and he was literally unable to move for seconds on end, right? And he's now thinking about, the sins that he's committed, and now thinking about, oh, like that's kind of like what. But this is like the best. This is like the brilliant thing about the album, right? About this track, sorry. Framing it as, yes, I'm being baptized, I'm being washed from my sins, but here I am dying and I am still sinful, right? But just how he was able to articulate that in a genuinely unsettling scenario, yeah, worked for
Right.
me, right? And yeah, I would say yes, this is one of the most unsettling songs on this album, boy. But just tonally, like just thematically and songwriting, boy. Just boy, Abel's songwriting, boy, is great though, just in terms of what he's able to say, right? So up next we have Open Hearts, right? And here is where he touches on, love, right? Because yeah, that's what he always talks about, right? But more about, and this is familiar territory, of course, right? The idea of why you want to love me? Look at me. I'm sinful and I'm dark and twisted inside. Why do you love me, right? So in this case, it just feels like he's afraid to open up to somebody who like just genuinely has feelings for him, right? And yeah, it just makes for a really like powerful, like really emotional moment on the record here. And yeah, the production really really worked here too, right? So afterwards we get Opening Night, which I felt kind of plays out like an interlude because it's only like a minute and a half in length. But the beat is really interesting though because it has this kind of weird vaporwave kind of vibe to it, and you also hear like this, like these phone bleeps and bloops in the background as well, right? But lyrically, it doesn't really stand out as much as the previous songs though. But here it's just basically him kind of talking about just the disconnect he feels from this new romantic partner of his, right? Because he's getting ready to do a show, right? Another aspect of the album is him performing. But in this case, he prepares by taking drugs, right? Another wall reference, right? If you know the album, you know what I'm talking about, right? So yeah, there's this disconnect that's set up here on that track, right? Afterwards, we get Reflections, laughing, where we get to see the duality of this, superstar lifestyle, right? He's smiling on the outside and he wants everybody to think that, he has it made and everything's good and whatnot, right? But there's a darkness that he's suppressing, right? It's through drugs and alcohol, right? There's a moment in the halfway point where an ex of his calls and, she's talking about, oh, one of my friends saw you at the show in Texas and you weren't looking like you were looking kind of run down and all that kind of stuff, and I know what you're doing in that hotel room, and I know you're taking your pills and your liquor and all that kind of stuff, and you literally hear him you hear Abel drinking and taking pills while she on the phone, you hear all that kind of stuff, right? But here's where which really surprised me, right? Travis Scott shows up. And
Okay.
what he does, right? Like, well, they actually like sort of pitch shift his voice a little bit, right? Yeah, and he's literally playing this dark alter ego, this dark side of evil, right?
Right.
And he's
Right.
rapping more like, yeah, all the fame and wealth and drugs and gills, all that kind of stuff. But he does not sound happy. He does not sound happy at all, right? And that's the irony of it all, right? So it goes even deeper now. Like here on this record, shit gets really, really dark, right? So we get what, in my opinion, is probably one of, if not the darkest song on this album, by Enjoy the Show, which features, yeah, Future. And what catch me, right? I didn't even know that he was on this track, right? Because when I look at the track list, his name wasn't even added there, right? So that man just pop up and do a verse, but like, what? You in this? Like, what? You know what I mean? And I thought that he killed it. Like, his verse was great, right? But why I say this is the darkest track here is basically both of them just saying, yeah, this is why we need drugs. This is why we take them. This is why we need them. And don't tell me what to do because we're grown and we will take these things and I don't care and I don't care and I don't care. That's basically the message of the track, right? But in the context of the album, you understand why they're saying this, right? So again, similar to what I said last time with balloonerism, this is not like condoning drug use. That's not what it's about, right? But yeah, throughout this track, you get the sense of loneliness. You get the idea of why they need drugs to cope with the pain, right? And even Future like commit to the performance. Like I thought that his role in this was great actually, right? I mean, I wasn't really like quite vibing with Future's albums like right after that one where he did with Metro Boomin, like the first one where Kendrick fired the first shot. Yeah, but I felt like this one, that man actually came through and did his damn thing, Jed. And well, he and Future, Future and as you know, Future and Weeknd and Travis Scott. I mean, them as boys. So it was good seeing them on this album, right? So up next we have "Given Up on Me," which actually is produced by Metro Boomin, right? So look at that, right? So I find it so interesting, right? Because last time, I talked about soundtrack to Coup d'etat, right? And one of the songs that was on that movie was this song called a cover actually called "Wild in the Wind," right? Which is done by Nina Simone, right? So that actually is sampled at the very beginning, and then it leads into the song itself, right? I thought that was really cool how Metro flipped that thing, right? And even Future pops up on the bridge and sings alongside Weekend as well, right? Again, still playing that whole duality, that dark alter ego thing, right? But yeah, I mean the beat actually is really good, right? And again, it's just pretty much Weekend. Just this is like the hangover moment, right? Where he's feeling like he was on the high, but now he's on the low now because of the drugs and whatnot, right? So even like he's just kind of pushing everybody away. He doesn't even want sunshine, right? He doesn't want anybody to try to take care of him or sympathize with him. He just wants to be all alone, right? And then from here, like things just sort of lighten up because yes, at this point in time, shit was just incredibly dark, right? And rightfully so, right? But here we get probably one of my favorite tracks from this, right? I Can't Wait to Get There. Boy, the first time I hear that, I swear this was like a Tyler the Creator beat, right? Because of the Neptunes inspired synth work, the sort of 80s vibe. It feels like a Quiet Storm track, right? Very old school R&B track, right? But it's just the vibe of it, boy, just so nice and just warm, boy, right? And it just feels like almost like the cool down period now after all the like the glimpse of light after all that darkness that we got over the past previous tracks, right? And yeah, Abel, because he kind of trying to be a little bit more optimistic here. Yeah, he get on some braggy shit. He rapping about, well, sorry, singing about all the accomplishments that he had, right? Now you make the joke of this before I told you I was going to talk about this, right? You was wondering if he was going to take any shots at Drake, right? Now I would,
Right, right. I heard it at a small this. I heard it at a small kind of shots fired, slight straight thing,
all
but
right.
nothing major.
Well,
So somebody made a comments on one of these online things, and I saw it show
right.
up. So like, all right,
I feel is this particular track here, right? Because he
right,
mentioned enemies twice now, right? He say something along the lines. I think the first one is like, unlike my enemies, I have a hole on my soul. You know what I mean? I think that was like
right.
one just paraphrasing here, like that was one of the lines. But there's a next line near the end where he says he talk about eviscerating his enemies and pissing on their graves. When I hear that, I was like, all right, that's specifically a Drake. That the whole bunch of people. That's just one man he called out there, right? But over
Right.
the beat and just how
Yeah.
light it is, you could tell like, yeah, he in the bag, he bragging. So he take a little time to just take one shot and then just move on. But dog, one of the best songs in this album, just because of just that production, but it's so warm and whew, this words can't describe it. You have to hear it for yourself. It's like just a
Right.
perfect cool down track, right? But yeah, any thoughts on the possible shot being fired at Drake with this track here?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the track, but is something I was thinking of, and yeah, because it's aligned somebody say, with respect to that. But I'll look it up. That's all. Yeah.
I feel it's
But
this. I feel it's
when it come up,
this. Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, you mentioned
See?
that, right? So,
Yep.
and my enemies hated because I own my soul. Yeah,
I
this is
own
true.
my
Right.
soul. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Right.
Yeah, which have some music industry connotations to it. The guy thinking like
Correct.
owning
Exactly.
your
Yeah.
masters. It's deeper
Right.
than
Right.
that's what it is, right? Yeah. But that eviscerating your enemies thing, that is a Drake shot. I know that for sure. But again, the beat's so nice and warm that you don't even care. Like it'll just probably catch you off guard. That was with me. It just catch me by surprise, right? So speaking of Neptunes, we get another smooth banger in the form of Timeless, right? Another one
Right.
of my favorite tracks, right?
Right.
Yeah.
This one is gonna stick with me because yeah, I was like, oh, I saw Neptune's name. Right. Cool.
Yeah,
Right.
well, actually, Pharrell, right? So yeah, Pharrell
Right. Right.
come
Right.
true with a bouncy beat here. What really worked with me, and I should mention too, this is another braggy track, right? This is just Weekend feeling itself, talking about the theme and how we could still pull in gills, all that kind of stuff, right? But what make this work for me? What was the surprising aspect for me of this track for me, right? Is the verse from Playboy Carti. Because, alright, so I will confess, not the biggest fan of Playboy, right? I appreciate
Right.
his role in Gen Z rap music. I get
He's
why he's there, right? I get, right?
yeah, I don't know. I just look at him as kind of the late stage part of rap. Like he's a kind of almost avant-garde. There's a you could compare it to like art movements. He's like that. He's one of those. I don't know. That's how I feel about him.
Yeah, and even what was that track? Magnolia in the hood, I really rock. Blah, 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 blah. Like I
Well,
kind of
yeah,
fuck
but I
with that
guess
track. I think that track hard,
right,
right? But I'm not a big fan of him, right? But why like his verse here, right? Is like I felt like I like the fact that he was going back to his traditional in quotes rapping voice instead of this weird voice that he was doing over the past couple of years. I don't know if you ever heard Carnival from Kanye West and Tidal or Sign, right?
right,
He's the
yeah,
last man rap and he do this herder
yeah,
herder
yeah,
herder. Like
yeah.
see that no. And he did this on this song. I love it from Camille Cabello. That's a song that
Yeah.
people was literally laughing at because of how really stupid his
No,
like
that's saying,
his
as I say,
hmm.
no, you see, he meant to be like avant-garde. Like I just look at him as an avant-garde artist in that sense. Like
What, just
that's
talking
why
just say a bunch of unintelligible nonsense and call
well,
it rap.
it's one of those. It's one of those weird, like a lot of like modern and contemporary art do this stuff. He's that, but for rap. Like that's how I think about it. Like I can see, I don't, what I don't get it. It don't appeal to me, but I get why people could like him. Yeah, because in a sense he's a kind of anti-rapper in a sense. Like I don't know.
Oh, I get yeah.
That's a deeper conversation for with respect to this. But like yeah, that it's not like it's not somebody I truly throw out completely. Same
Right.
reason I didn't throw out Young Thug back with Lifestyle came out, right? Same
Oh
reason.
yeah.
Yeah.
With Rich Homie Kwan. By the way, R.I.P.
Right.
Rich Homie Kwan, right? Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I thought his verse was decent, and it tapped into the vibe of the album already, which again, is about the fame and the wealth, but it's driven by this rock star lifestyle. It's drugs and sex and all that kind of stuff, right? So I felt like his verse leaned into that. It didn't feel out of pocket, right? All the guest verses the rap verses didn't feel out of place at all, right? And I actually love that about the record, right? But yeah, timeless, great. That's a bop. I fuck with that, right? So after that, now after the really like light-hearted vibe of those two tracks, now we get into some self-reflection here, right? So we have Niagara Falls and Take Me Back
Right.
to
So
LA,
there's
right?
another track that's you see, but is it nice how timeless and Niagara Falls flow into each other well, like subtly?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
they song like each other, but it's a different song, and that's what I think of this. It does the whole, when you do the color change thing, and it just feels like a color flowing like from red to blue, but you don't really notice when it change.
Oh,
That's what this album
I
feels like.
love that. I love how you articulate that though. Well done.
Right, that's what I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
about this album. Like it's like the last track feels very different from the first track, but you don't know when it changed. You don't know. It's kind of almost heap paradox kind of thing about it now. Like when did it become a this? Is that now?
Yes,
It's
yes.
not a way. Yeah.
And even
Go ahead.
better, it fits with the character arc now because this is
Exactly.
all
Right.
the weekend. This is him. This is we
Yeah.
experiencing everything he's experiencing, right? But yeah, with these two tracks here, the first one, Niagara Falls, is just basically talking about this old relationship that he had, but then eventually it didn't work out well as we see in the next track, Take Me Back to LA, right? But on that latter track, there's this feeling of like just longing for to go back to the past now, but he know he can't go back there because there's a lot of pain involved, right? He talks about wanting to be lonely, but then afterwards feeling bad that he's alone. Like he doesn't want to be alone, but he kind of accepts that he kind of deserves to be alone because he just feels like a piece of shit at this point, right? And then we have Big Sleep, right? Which you talked about before, right? And yes, to those who don't know, yes, it is a reference in the movie The Big Sleep, right?
Right.
Famous neo noir film, But here's the thing: what catch me with it, right? Well, two things. One, basically, this is Abel at his lowest. At this point, he is just down on his luck. He's just like waiting for death to come and take him. He's just literally lying down on his bed, waiting for death to come and claim him, waiting for the Reaper to come and claim him, right? He's given up at this point, right? But then now you get this bridge, right? Which is basically the now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep, right? I didn't know it was him, right? Until I went up on Genius and I saw it there, right? I don't know how true this is, right? But this is actually Giorgio Moroder himself do that, as in the composer of Scarface and other movies, including Midnight Express, because earlier on, like you hear like a beat and a couple of beat switches here there, you hear the Midnight Express team playing in the background at a point in time, right? Yeah, dude, they actually brought in that guy to do that moment. Like what? Like how will they pull this off? So in
Okay,
other words,
okay.
it's not just you're sampling his work. You get the man himself, the composer himself, to do those vocals. That was wild, Dread. I don't know how true it is, but
Nice.
when I hear that, I was like, wow, that is insane, Dread. Like, how much money they pay that man to do that, boy? Like, I don't know, right? But yeah, Big Sleep is a great moment on the album. I mean, yes, it is dark, like very, very, very dark, right? Because again, this is Abel at his lowest at this point, right? But sonically, boy, wow, that it's just so captivating. You know, there's the production on it, right? But yeah, you say you love Big Sleep, yeah? Why you love it? Why do you love this track?
Yeah, just again, the slow somberness of the whole thing is like, oh, this is real vibes though. This one sticking to me surprising, because usually poppy stuff will catch me, but it's like, oh, there's a vibe here. I get what they're going for, and it just, I don't know if what they're doing, if it's my headphones is the right type of sonic thing, but it just get like a nice, interesting, like kind of almost, sonic limbo almost. Like, all right, vibe. All right, I dig in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and somber is the right term. Okay, yeah, it's a somber ass track, right? But luckily things brighten up just a little bit though, but slowly but surely things brighten up, right? So we get Give Me Mercy, right? Which is this slightly upbeat 80s R&B vibe of a song, right? And yeah, basically this is where Abel is asking God for mercy, right? So, he's kind of warming up to the fact that there is this higher being out there. But in this case, it's like, what, I've done so much wrong, did so much bad things, and it's just like, I need help. So, give me mercy, right? And that is, something that kind of follows through to the very end, right? This idea that, spare me, or mercy, just that idea of it. No, it's not just you are baptized and everything is all solved. No, like you need to go through some sort of suffering, in order to get some sort of absolution, right? So yeah, it's set up brilliantly here with this track here, right? I also like how retro it sounds, just the beat itself. It really does sound like some 80s R&B song that you would have, like you would have heard it like on the radio when you were growing up. It really sounds very authentic, right? Up next we have Drive, right? So yeah, this is where things start to get a little bit more hopeful, right? And according to Genius, I don't know how true it is, but it could be, right? This is the moment where Abel is apparently shedding off his Weeknd persona. He's preparing to
Right.
leave that Weeknd persona behind and move forward with his life, right? So like a track like Drive, right? It's a simple analogy, right? Yeah, you're driving towards the sunset, right, or the sunrise, right? You're on this clear path. You know where you're going. You're leaving the past behind, and that's what it is, and it works, right? And I thought the hook was really the hook really stuck with me as well, right? But this thematically, it makes sense, right? It's him shedding that old skin and moving forward, right? Up next, we get The Abyss, right? Which features, Lana Del Rey, right? Who comes through with a great verse near the end, right? And in the context of the album, at least this is how I read it, right? It's him kind of saying like, all right, this is my time to go, about to transition, right? You could interpret it as, he's leaving the Weeknd persona, he's gonna do something else, right? Or you could interpret it as, I'm about to leave this earth, right? So he's more or less talking about, look, like, what's the legacy I'm going to leave behind, right? He's telling his loved ones, hold on to what I did on my time on this earth, right? Yes, it was fueled by a lot of pain, but look, I made, I changed lives now, I did a lot of great things musically, right? And I want you all to hold on to that, because I don't know what will happen to me when I go, right? So it's like that, right? So that's thematically, I think it really, really works here, right? And just a few more tracks before we wrap up here, right? So we have Red Terror, which actually have a video for it, right? I'll talk about the video in a bit, right? So I still not really a fan of the stuttery since at the beginning. Like I don't know,
Right.
it just don't work for me. But everything else about it actually work, right? But here's the thing, I didn't know what it was about until I saw the video, which I actually saw last night, and I read the lyrics for it, right? So the
Right.
video is kind of wild, but it's this animated thing where you see like a young
Right.
Weeknd, but he has no mouth, and he's going through like this sort of like Pan's Labyrinth kind of inspired kind of
Right. Yeah.
journey, because it's all this like he's in this dark forest and there's like all these like
It's
branches trying
very
to rope him in. It's very fairy tale. It's very dark. It's like a dark
yeah.
fairy tale that you're getting
What's
in.
the name of that animated The Adventures of Mark Twain? Like, you know what that is? That's a
No.
whole claymation thing, and it's real super weird, and they fight the devil, and it's a whole fucked up thing. But the whole thing was claymation. A la
Okay.
Gumby.
What
Yeah.
year? When was it made?
85, I want to say.
Oh, well, 80s, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's like the perfect decade for like really trippy,
Yeah, but
fucked up stuff, right?
that's what it feel like. That's what it feel like. It's like Gumby, but that level of claymation. If you remember, Ingaluk and Yamilak and
Oh
right that
yeah,
shit.
yeah, yeah, Nyam
Yeah,
Nyam and yeah, which he grew
yeah,
up
yeah.
on. And yeah, there were a few moments in that yeah freaked the shit out of me. Like, dog, a planet disintegrating. That is
Yeah,
scary
yeah,
shit.
the,
When
the
you are
whole
young and you see that,
yeah,
that
yeah, the
scar
whole
you, you
world,
know, the world disintegrate in seconds. So what the
you
hell?
know, the whole world,
Yeah,
real dreadful.
boy. Like the concept of that though, like still is fucked
Yeah,
up, right? But anyway, but enough about that, right? But yeah, the video is really, really trippy and really weird and frightening and whatnot, right? But yes, I mean if you're familiar with Weeknd's music, like his music videos, yes, they do border on horror stuff, right? Horror inspired stuff,
right,
right? That's one thing I like about him though. Like again, just subverting the music. It's like something that sounds sonically pleasant, and then you see a twisted version of that, right? Like I'll try an example with Dawn FM. How do I make you love me? That song is just so bright and danceable, and then when you see the video, it's this weird Akira inspired kind of thing. But I talk about
right,
Akira like when the body started disintegrate into this great blob, and that's what he's going for. You know what I mean? Like that's what you gotta use
right,
these bases for your video, But it works, right? But anyway, but at the end of the video, he gets a voice, right? But he has to undergo all that pain, right? But yeah, believe it or not, I didn't even know this until I read this on Genius. He's actually singing from the perspective of his mother. He's talking about the personal pain that she went through to give birth to Abel.
right.
I'm like, all right, I did not know it was like that. Again, you see the visuals and the whole emphasis on no mouth, and think it's about that now, but it's actually just about the pain of just the circumstances that leads to your growth as an individual now. So that's what he's tapping into, right? So two more tracks to go, right? We have Without Warning, right? Where he kind of goes back to that same incident where he lost his voice, right? So what he's doing, he's presenting this sort of scenario where he's performing for the last time, right? And before on the record, his voice goes, right? But on this track here, his whole body shuts down. Like
Right.
everything goes, right? And he's just rapping he's singing like, I'm about like literally he's dying on stage, right? So you are seeing my last performance on this earth. Like I am about to make this transition right now. This is my final show. This is the last hurrah. And you're seeing it right in front of your face, right? It is chilling, it is dark, it is morbid, it is very, very somber. But as far as like segueing into the final track, the title track, yeah, it works brilliantly, though, in my opinion, right? And yeah, that final track though, which is the title track, Hurry Up Tomorrow, is him basically embracing that light. Like, he's making that transition right now, right? But what I love about this, right? Because at first I hear this thing and I tell myself, all right, so okay, so he dies then. The character dies here. But you can interpret it that way, but you can also interpret it as the alter ego of the Weeknd finally dying, right?
Right.
But lyrically, what he's saying is that almost, this light, you know what I mean? Like, Lord, this heavenly light that he's finally receiving, right? Whether it's true, whether it's rebirth or actual death and he's going into heaven or hell or whatever it is, he's more treating it like, here's what. I have done way too much bad things in my life. And like I just can't let go of this no matter how hard I try. So this light is just basically you like it this light is almost like fire. So I have to go through this fire. I have to burn these sins away from me. Like I have to suffer at this stage in order to achieve true, freedom. That's what I have to do.
Right.
And that's what he expresses lyrically here. And that actually works to like just thematically, right? Because I like that he's not preaching to the choir. He's not just saying, Lord lift me up and all that kind of stuff. Because it could have been one of those Lord lift me up kind of tracks, right? But because of the persona that he's been playing all these years, right? Art imitating life, so to speak, right? It kind of makes sense that he's just saying, look, here's what I don't know what this tomorrow will has to offer. Maybe I will die or maybe I will be reborn. I don't know. And even in the previous track, he was just saying, I don't know what will happen. He doesn't know what will happen to tomorrow. but he accepts that he has to face tomorrow. He can't keep running from it all the time, right? So yeah, in this case, it's like, look, whatever light you had to shine on me, just burn through everything. Just get rid of everything, all the toxic stuff inside of me, Dread. And what happens afterwards, happened afterwards, right? And he just sort of ends it like that. So you don't know if he is dead, as in the Weeknd character. You don't know if he's dead or if he's reborn, or if he's going to be reborn, and we're gonna get either a new Weeknd or Abel just being Abel, making music, whatever. We don't know. It just sort of ends at that point, right? But agree to disagree. I think that this is like just a great way to end the album off. Like, just from
Right.
a thematic true liner, it just ends on such a great note, right? But again, what the takeaway from it is just him feeling like he has to undergo pain, like for the last time in his life. Because yeah, through the addictions, he felt a lot of pain. He was numb in the pain, but he still felt pain nonetheless, right? It just feels like he just has to go through one final passage of pain just to achieve peace. And that's what this track is about here, right? So let's wrap things up, right? So to answer the question that, people will say, oh, is this the best Weekend album ever? I don't think so, right? But I will say, as far as the trilogy goes, I would, all right, so as far as just favorite Weekend albums, Dawn FM is still on top. That's still my top favorite, right? As far as this trilogy goes, right? This Hell, Purgatory, Heaven, um, Hurry Up Tomorrow, I would say, is my second favorite. And
Right.
then After Hours come, last, right? That's not to say that I don't love After Hours, right? I love After Hours, right? But because of just the closure that we get on this one, I would put this one over After Hours, right? And I can see people coming and saying that, doing their comparisons, which entry in the trilogy is the best, right? But like I say, Dawn FM is up there for me, because the moment that I heard it, the moment I heard the beats, the moment I got the concept, I was like, yes, I love everything about this, right? But as far as just his full catalog, I can't say that this is his best work, right? Which is fine. This is understandable, right? But I'm saying this too because it feels like this is the culmination of his entire discography up to this
Right.
point. Like, if you've been following up on the themes and the character, again, drawing from real life inspiration, yeah, it feels like this is the end point. This is where it was supposed to reach anyway. It was either he dies, like the character dies from a drug overdose, which was kind of alluded to at the end of After Hours. But in this case,
Right.
like, he got a chance now through Dawn FM. He's now saying, oh, this is the error, these are the errors of my ways. Okay. But it's too late for him to change. And while he tries to change on this record, it's kind of too late. So you just kind of have to accept, look, I have to die or I have to be reborn. And now I could start over or not start over. It's left up to the audience to interpret what the last track means, right? But yeah, as far as just the end of this long character arc, yes, they stick the landing with this, right? And yes, surprise, surprise, yes, I kind of love this album. This is one of the best records I've heard all year. And it come out late January too, which is amazing to me, right? So it's like that, right? But yeah, just as I wrap things up, right? So yes, the length is daunting. I know for a lot of listeners, they will find the length to be a little too much, right? But just sonically from start to end, it's great. I love how cohesive it is. I love just the sequencing of tracks, right? Because that's what you alluded to, right? That's how the tracks are sequenced one after the other. It works, right? But again, it's one of those albums that, like, I feel like if you just listen to it probably a few times and you get the full gist of anything of the whole thing, you could skip tracks when you listen to it again and pull out your favorite ones and stick with that, right? But I think that it is one that you have to listen to from start to end to get the full context of it, right? But that's not to say that there aren't a few lulls in the track list. Like, I felt like there are a few moments where it's like that. I'm not saying that this should have been taken out, but it's like, all right, I get, okay. I'm not saying I'm not gonna listen to them, but okay, I get. And you move on to the next track, right? So of course, and you would expect this from an album of this length anyway, right? Not all the tracks will land, right? Some of them you'll just think they're cool, they're right, but others just hit. Like the moment you hear them or the moment you just re-listen to them, right? And lastly, thematically, yes, this is standard weekend fare. We've heard this stuff before, right? But it's just in this case, this is the end, right? This is him kind of coming to terms with who he is and the legacy that he left behind. That's the real important part, right? It's a legacy built on pain, right? It's built on the stuff that he used to numb the pain, right? On the hearts that he broke and all that kind of stuff, right? But will people look at that on a positive light or negative? We don't know, right? And yeah, we don't know what the future will be for Abel at this moment, right? We don't know if he'll go under the name Abel or if he'll still be the Weeknd, but he'll do lighter work, lighter thematic work. We don't know, right? So yeah, this album is kind of brilliant, right? I can't say that this ends the trilogy off perfectly, but I would say just as far as ending it, I thought that it did just a fantastic job, right? So for me, strong 4 very like 4.5 out of 5, man. This is what he is best. Still, I put the 1FM over this because just everything about it, I just stuck with me, right? But as far as ending the character of the Weeknd, yes, it works, right? But again, I don't know what the future will be as far as the Weeknd goes, right? I'll close this month, as in February. The Weeknd will be turning 35 years old, right? So I see this as just him kind of saying, look, I had to get this out of the way. So now as I embrace this new year in my life, let me see what the future holds, right? So I hope that this is not the end and this is not the last that we'll hear of the Weeknd, right? And as far as the film stuff goes, just lastly, I hope that he keeps at it, right? Because yes, I didn't really care for the idol at all, but I got what he was trying to do with that, right? I think that if he takes that whole neo noir inspired, if he keep doing these kind of films, yeah, he could carve himself out as something like a Donald Glover. Not saying that he will be like Donald Glover, but he could carve that own lane as well, to as far as I don't know, writing or directing or producing films or whatever it is, right? So you have a future, right? But as far as his music work, well, I guess we will see when time comes, right? But if this is the end of the Weeknd character, well, yeah, he ends things off on a high note, man. I can't be mad at this. So, Ricardo, final thoughts or rating before we move on?
Yeah. I again didn't super get into this album. Should have, but I skimmed it, enjoyed it, and yeah, rating as it is, yeah, like a 8 out of 10, probably a 7. Didn't have as many the bangers I wanted, but like the stuff that is not the bangers is actually where the genius is. That's how I felt about it. Says that.
All right, and one more thing. Where do you? Well, I know again we're not big super diehard Weeknd fans, right? But where do you see his trajectory going now? Seeing that he end this trilogy here one and he put out a movie too, so we don't know.
No clue. I have no clue where you're going with this because he's not the Weeknd anymore. So it's this whole paradigm of not being the Weeknd anymore. That's interesting. I want to see where you're going with it. Yeah, that's exciting for the next project. But this a pretty strong album, and don't know about cementing his legacy, but it's one of those where you're gonna call himself if the next album gonna be just Abel or Testify or something like that. And I don't know, might do some biblical thing, Keith and Abel. I don't know what the fuck.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.